They fired me with a cold email at 9:02 p.m. No thank you, no meeting, not even a phone call. But what they didn't know was I still held the keys to their entire brand. And that night, I used it to buy back the heart of their company for exactly $1. My name is Isabel Hart. 8 years ago, I was living in a basement apartment in Baltimore, writing the first lines of code for an emotion analysis algorithm while piggybacking on my neighbor's Wi-Fi. This is the story of how I lost everything I built and then took it all back with a single dollar bill. I remember those early days vividly. The basement smelled perpetually of damp concrete and laundry detergent from the building's washing machines humming on the other side of my bedroom wall. My desk was a repurposed door resting on 2 filing cabinets. My chair, a $15 find from a thrift store that creaked like an old ship whenever I leaned back to stretch. I lived on instant ramen, store-brand cereal, and the cheapest coffee I could find. My neighbors probably thought I was nocturnal. I coded through the night when the borrowed Wi-Fi was fastest, sleeping during the day when the connection slowed to a crawl as everyone else in the building came online. My algorithm was simple in concept but devilishly complex in execution. A system that could analyze text and detect not just sentiment, but emotional nuance. It could differentiate between anger and frustration, between contentment and joy, between polite dismissal and genuine interest. I called it Emotive Core, though that name wouldn't stick. I had no formal computer science education. Everything I knew came from online tutorials, borrowed textbooks, and countless hours of trial and error. What I lacked in formal training, I made up for in obsession. I dreamed in code logic. I solved problems while brushing my teeth. I woke up at 3 a.m. to jot down solutions that had materialized in my sleep. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A friend of a friend worked for a major retail chain that was experiencing a social media crisis. Someone had posted a video of one of their store managers being rude to a customer, and the internet was in full outrage mode. My friend mentioned my algorithm, and somehow, the company decided to take a chance on me. They gave me access to their social media feeds and let me run my analysis. Within hours, I had mapped the emotional trajectory of the crisis, identified the main trigger points, and suggested targeted response strategies based on the emotional signatures I was detecting. The crisis manager called me the next day. "Whatever you did," she said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and excitement. "It worked. We've contained the situation. The anger metrics are trending down across all platforms. How did you do this?" I tried to explain the algorithm, but she wasn't interested in the technical details. "Can you do this again? For other situations?" And just like that, I had my first client. Word spread quickly. Within months, I had more work than I could handle alone. I moved out of the basement into a small but above-ground apartment. I bought a proper desk and chair. I upgraded from instant ramen to takeout. But I knew I needed help to scale this properly. That's when I found Marcus and Divya, a UI/UX designer and a data scientist who shared my vision for what this technology could become. Together, we formed Signalcraft, working out of Marcus's converted garage, which smelled marginally better than my basement had. We complemented each other perfectly. I handled the core algorithm and product direction. Marcus created an interface so intuitive that clients could navigate complex emotional landscapes without any training. Divya built data models that allowed us to predict emotional trends rather than just analyzing them retroactively. For 2 years, we bootstrapped the company, reinvesting every dollar we earned. We expanded our client base from retail to include entertainment, politics, and finance. Our system helped movie studios test audience reactions, political campaigns gauge voter sentiment, and financial institutions track market psychology. Then came the interest from investors. We weren't looking to sell. But when Vera Nova Labs approached us with their offer, it seemed too good to refuse. Vera Nova was a rising star in the tech world, known for acquiring promising startups and giving them the resources to flourish while largely leaving them operationally independent. Their CEO at the time, Anita Desai, personally courted us, speaking eloquently about how Signalcraft aligned with their vision of technology that understands humanity. The deal they proposed was unusual but appealing. They would acquire Signalcraft for a nominal sum. Yes, $1, but with a complex equity arrangement that promised to make us wealthy if certain growth targets were met. Most importantly, I would remain the owner of the Signalcraft trademark and intellectual property, licensing it to Viranova. The arrangement included a clause, 9B111, that gave me the right to buy back the entire operation for $1 if I was ever terminated without cause. At the time, that clause seemed like a mere formality, a bit of legal protection that would never be needed. Anita assured me that I would be central to Signalcraft's future. I would stay on as Chief Product Officer with full control over the technology's development. "We're not buying Signalcraft to change it," she told me. "We're buying it to amplify what you've already built." Marcus and Divya were hesitant, but I convinced them. The resources Viranova offered would allow us to expand faster than we ever could on our own. We would have access to enterprise-level clients we couldn't reach as an independent startup. And the financial upside, if we hit our targets, was substantial. So we signed the deal. Signalcraft became part of Viranova Labs, though it remained a distinct brand with its own identity. I became Chief Product Officer. Marcus became Head of Design. Divya led our newly expanded data science team. The first year was everything we'd hoped for. With Viranova's backing, we quintupled our client base. We moved from Marcus's garage to a proper office in downtown Baltimore. We hired a team of developers to help refine and expand the core algorithm. We launched Signalcraft 2.0, which could analyze emotional patterns across multiple languages and cultural contexts. Anita kept her word. She consulted me on every major decision regarding Signalcraft, treated our team with respect, and provided the resources we needed without micromanagement. Then everything changed. Viranova's board forced Anita out after a disagreement over company direction. Her replacement was Carter Miles, a former management consultant with slicked back hair and a collection of tailored suits that probably cost more than my annual salary. The day after he took over, he called an all-hands meeting. He stood on a small stage in Viranova's main conference room, clicked through a PowerPoint presentation filled with charts and buzzwords, and announced a strategic realignment. "Emotion is the new currency," he declared, pacing the stage like a motivational speaker. "We're not just analyzing sentiment anymore, we're monetizing feelings. We're turning emotions into assets." I exchanged glances with Marcus and Divya. None of us knew what that actually meant. After the meeting, Carter pulled me aside. "Isabel," he said, resting his hand on my shoulder in a way that made me want to step back. "I've heard great things about your work. I'm excited to see how we can elevate Signalcraft to the next level. We have some exciting developments in the pipeline." I told him. "We're working on a predictive model that can forecast emotional responses to unreleased content with 87% accuracy." He nodded, though his eyes had already drifted to his phone. Great. Let's set up a proper meeting next week to discuss the rebranding." "Rebranding?" I asked. "We just refreshed the brand 6 months ago." "That was under the old vision," he said with a dismissive wave. "We need something that reflects our new direction. Something more premium." That meeting was the first crack in what would become a widening chasm. Carter had no interest in the technology that made Signalcraft valuable. He was fixated on superficial changes, a new logo, a new color scheme, a new tagline. He replaced understanding emotions with "emotion is an asset, data is the past." Over the next few months, the changes accelerated. Marcus's design team was gradually dismantled and replaced with external consultants who knew nothing about our users or our interface philosophy. Divya's data scientists were reassigned to other projects within Viranova. Our development roadmap was scrapped in favor of quick-win features that Carter could showcase to the board. I tried to fight these changes. I scheduled meetings with Carter that he repeatedly canceled. I sent detailed emails explaining why these decisions were harmful to Signalcraft's core value proposition. I presented data showing that our user satisfaction was declining under the new direction. None of it made a difference. Carter had a vision, or at least, he had a story he was selling to the board. and nothing as trivial as evidence was going to change his mind. Then the rumors started. Administrative assistants whispering in break rooms, sudden closed-door meetings that ended when I walked by, documents quickly minimized when I approached someone's desk. Divya was the one who confirmed what I suspected. They're planning layoffs, she told me over coffee one morning, her voice low despite the fact that we were 3 blocks from the office. Next quarter, and your name is on the list. I felt a cold weight settle in my stomach. How do you know? I was helping the finance team with some predictive models for budget planning. I saw the spreadsheet. They're calling it Operation Streamline. They're targeting the original Signalcraft team specifically. That night, I dug through my files until I found my copy of the acquisition agreement. I hadn't looked at it in years, but I remembered Clause 9b1. I needed to know if it was still valid. It was. If I was terminated without cause, I had the right to repurchase the Signalcraft brand, including all associated intellectual property, for $1. Viranova would retain the right to use the underlying technology they had developed since the acquisition, but the Signalcraft name, logo, and original codebase would revert to me. I scanned the document and sent it to Rachel Sterling, the lawyer who had helped us with the original deal. If they come for me, I texted her, initiate restart protocol. Rachel responded with a thumbs-up emoji. She understood. For the next few weeks, I played along. I attended Carter's strategy sessions and nodded at appropriate intervals. I presented progress reports on projects that I knew would never see the light of day. I smiled at executives who couldn't tell the difference between sentiment analysis and a simple keyword search. All the while, I was preparing. I updated my personal documentation of the original Signalcraft codebase. I maintained contact with key clients who had been with us from the beginning. I quietly reached out to former team members who had left or been pushed out of Viranova. And then, on a Tuesday night at 9:02 p.m., it happened. I was at home, working on a side project, a refinement of the original algorithm that I kept separate from Viranova's systems. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line was simply, Personnel Changes at Signalcraft. The email was from Viranova's HR department. It was addressed to me and blind copied to who knows how many others. It was 3 paragraphs long, written in the passive voice that corporations use when they want to avoid responsibility. As part of our ongoing organizational restructuring, certain positions have been identified as redundant to our streamlined operational model. My position was one of those deemed redundant. My employment would terminate effective immediately. I was instructed to return my company laptop and keycard to security. My email access had already been disabled. A separate email would follow with information about my severance package. No thank you for my years of work. No acknowledgement of my role in creating the product that they were still selling. No personal message from Carter or anyone else in leadership. Just a cold, impersonal dismissal delivered when they assumed I wouldn't be in the office to make a scene. I sat staring at my screen for several minutes, a strange calm settling over me. Then I opened a new email and sent a single message to Rachel. They did it. Execute. I slept surprisingly well that night. When I woke up the next morning, I took my time getting ready. I put on my favorite suit, a charcoal gray number that I usually saved for client presentations. I had my usual breakfast of toast and coffee. I even read the news, something I rarely had time for. Then I wrote a letter by hand, something I hadn't done in years. I placed it in an envelope along with a personal check for $1 and a printed copy of Clause 9b.1 from the acquisition agreement. I took a car to Viranova's office building. I didn't use my key card to enter. I knew it would have been deactivated. Instead, I asked the receptionist to ensure that my package was delivered directly to the legal department. I waited until she called someone to come collect it. Then I went to a coffee shop across the street, ordered a latte, and waited. It took exactly 47 minutes. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Hart, this is Benjamin Walsh from Viranova's legal department. Yes, Mr. Walsh, I said, keeping my voice neutral. We've received your correspondence. I'd like to discuss this matter with you. Are you available to come to our offices? I'm afraid my keycard no longer works, I said. security instructions from HR. There was a pause. Of course, perhaps we could meet elsewhere. This is a rather delicate situation. I'm at the Courier coffee shop across the street. I'll be here for another hour. 12 minutes later, Benjamin Walsh walked in. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with the slightly harried look of someone who had been awakened in the middle of the night with an emergency. He ordered a coffee and sat down across from me. Ms. Hart, he began. I've reviewed the document you referenced in your letter. While technically the clause does exist, we believe there may be some misunderstanding about its applicability in the current situation. What's there to misunderstand? I asked. I was terminated without cause. The clause gives me the right to repurchase the Signalcraft brand for $1 in exactly that situation. Well, the company's position is that your termination was part of a larger restructuring, which constitutes a business necessity rather than a without cause termination of an individual employee. I smiled. Mr. Walsh, we both know that's not how the contract is written. The clause doesn't have an exception for restructuring. It's quite clear, if I'm terminated without cause, which I was, as my termination letter doesn't cite any cause, then I have this right. He shifted uncomfortably. The company is prepared to offer an enhanced severance package in exchange for a waiver of this clause. I'm not interested in an enhanced severance package. I've exercised my contractual right. I've submitted payment. The Signalcraft brand now belongs to me again. Walsh's face showed a flicker of something, respect, maybe, or at least recognition that this wasn't going to be as simple as he'd hoped. I'll need to consult with senior leadership, he said. Of course, I replied. In the meantime, please ensure that your company immediately ceases using the Signalcraft name, logo, and original codebase, as those now belong to me. Any continued use constitutes trademark infringement. He left looking considerably more harried than when he'd arrived. By that afternoon, the story had spread throughout Viranova. I received texts from former colleagues who were still there, describing the chaos. Carter had called an emergency executive meeting. The legal team was holed up in a conference room with printouts of the acquisition agreement spread across the table. Someone from the board had flown in on short notice. Meanwhile, I was busy. I had already secured a small office space in Philadelphia, just 3 blocks from Viranova's headquarters. I had reached out to 6 key members of the original Signalcraft team, including Aaron, our former head of design who had been pushed out by Carter's external consultants. All of them had agreed to join me. I had also contacted our original clients. Many of them had grown frustrated with the changes to Signalcraft under Viranova's direction. The interface had become cluttered with unnecessary features. The analysis had lost its nuance. The customer support had deteriorated. They were eager to work with us again. 3 days after I sent my letter, Viranova's legal team conceded. They had no choice. The clause was clear, and I had followed the procedure exactly as outlined. They sent me a formal acknowledgement that the Signalcraft brand, including all associated trademarks and the original codebase, now belonged to me. That same day, they removed all references to Signalcraft from their website and materials. They informed clients that Signalcraft was no longer part of Viranova's portfolio. They issued a press release announcing that they would be launching a new emotional analysis platform under a different name. The technology they had developed since the acquisition remained theirs, as per the agreement. But without the Signalcraft name and with their hasty rebranding, they struggled to maintain client confidence. Several major clients paused their contracts, waiting to see what would happen next. What happened next was that I officially relaunched Signalcraft as an independent company. Our new slogan was simple: unstructured, uncontrolled, only truth. Our office in Philadelphia quickly became operational. I rehired as many of the original team as I could. We rebuilt the platform from the original codebase, incorporating what we had learned but staying true to our initial vision: technology that truly understood the nuances of human emotion. The industry took notice. Tech blogs picked up the story. Founder buys back her company for $1 after being fired by email became a headline that circulated widely. Three of our largest original clients not only returned, but invested in a bridge round of funding to help us rebuild quickly. They had seen what had happened to Signalcraft under Vera Nova and wanted to ensure it didn't happen again. 6 months after my late-night firing, I was invited to replace a keynote speaker at a major industry conference. I stood on the stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, some familiar, some new, all attentive. I told them the whole story, from the basement apartment in Baltimore to the $1 check I had written to reclaim what was mine. I showed them a framed copy of that check, which now hung in our office. They thought firing me was the end, I said to the hushed audience. They forgot that I built this from nothing, and I had the paperwork to prove it. The audience rose to their feet, applauding. Behind me on the screen, the new Signalcraft logo appeared, a blue flame rising from a dollar sign. I had lost everything I built and then taken it all back with a single dollar bill. And that, as they say, was just the beginning. 8 years after I wrote the first lines of code for my emotion analysis algorithm, Signalcraft has grown into something I could never have imagined during those long nights in my basement apartment. We now employ over 200 people across offices in Philadelphia, Baltimore, and San Francisco. Our client list includes Fortune 500 companies, major political campaigns, and international NGOs. The technology has evolved far beyond its original capabilities. We can now analyze emotional patterns across dozens of languages, predict emotional responses to unreleased content with remarkable accuracy, and identify subtle emotional undercurrents in massive datasets. But through all of this growth and evolution, we've stayed true to our core principles. We still believe in technology that understands the nuances of human emotion. We still prioritize accuracy and insight over flashy features. We still treat our clients as partners rather than revenue sources. And we still have that framed $1 check on the wall of our headquarters, a reminder of where we came from and how close we came to losing it all. As for Vera Nova and Carter Miles, their hastily rebranded emotion analysis platform never gained traction. Without the Signalcraft name, and with their reputation damaged by how they had handled the situation, they struggled to retain clients. Carter was removed as CEO within a year. Vera Nova itself was acquired by a larger tech conglomerate 18 months later. I sometimes wonder if things might have been different if they had simply treated me with respect. If they had called me in for a meeting rather than sending a cold email. If they had acknowledged my contribution to the company. If they had offered a genuine thank you for my years of work. But they didn't, and their oversight became my opportunity. The lesson I learned, the lesson I share with every startup founder who asks for advice, is simple. Read every contract. Understand every clause. And never underestimate the power of a single dollar, invested wisely. My name is Isabel Hart. I lost everything I built, and then I took it all back. With interest.